Hello all, this is James Johnson, aka Sulfurblade, and I'm here to talk about the Witcher TV show that, well, evidently I've been living under a rock and I had no idea existed on Netflix. So I'm obviously a pretty hardcore gamer. That's what I do. That's what this channel is mainly about, is me playing video games constantly. And, being in my 50s now, and video games pretty much being the main hobby of my lifetime, games are a pretty big thing, and Witcher is one of the bigger games out there that have come out on PC. And while I have mixed emotions about The Witcher itself, in that I always felt it was a little, how do I put it? A little hyped as far as quality of RPGs goes. I prefer the Elder Scrolls for the most part, and I definitely prefer Kingdom Come Deliverance. I thought Kingdom Come Deliverance may have been the greatest RPG to date, as far as that type of RPG. For me, The Witcher, I kind of wish that Telltale would have made The Witcher, so it would have been more movie-like. As honestly, whenever I played The Witcher, I enjoyed the story portions. The side quests didn't do much for me. I just enjoyed the main story and watching the cutscenes of The Witcher, and that for me was the highlight of The Witcher. And there was so much stuff in between the main story arc and stuff that a Telltale type game would have gone by much faster, because it pretty much stays on the rail of the story, because that's the whole point behind that type of game. And I always felt that a Telltale Witcher would be better than the Witchers themselves, as it didn't do it for me for what it was. And I think that was mainly because of the PC port. I'm a PC gamer, and the port for the Witcher games was just so terrible. But that's not what this review here about the TV show is about. I just wanted to, lend background that I have knowledge about The Witcher coming into this TV show. And I quite enjoyed the video game story behind The Witcher. And obviously they've made some alterations in the show to a point. Yennefer looks a little different. Ciri looks a little different. What's her name? The redheaded mage, who's now a brunette in this one, definitely looks different. That may have been one of the weirder casting changes, but overall, I thought they did a really good job. Henry Cavill is an amazing Geralt. To be honest, Geralt was always my least favorite character when playing The Witcher, and he was me. And that was kind of one of the problems I had with The Witcher, is I was stuck as Geralt, and I didn't want to be stuck as Geralt. I would have loved to have played as anybody other than Geralt and maybe killed Geralt, but that's I kind of had some disdain for Geralt in the video game. But Henry Cavill, I can't speak. He's knocked it out of the park in his portrayal of Geralt, and I almost have a newfound love of the character after watching the first series. The first season of this TV show. So overall, I feel this TV show was amazing. I chose to binge watch it on Netflix instead of go watch The Rise of Skywalker, and I think I made a very good choice, to be honest. I'm very happy with having watched this TV show, though I do have a few nitpicks here. And well, that's to be understood. I will find something to nitpick about anything, and The Witcher TV show is not an exception. For me, The Witcher TV show is one of the best shows I've seen since, dare I say, Black Sails, dare I say, Game of Thrones, dare I say, what else is in this caliber? It's in that caliber. It's trying to be Game of Thrones caliber, and I don't think it quite got there, but it definitely tried. It was pretty freaking awesome. I would give this, if I had to rate this TV series, I would rate it at a strong A minus, something like a 93%, which is huge compared to almost most TV shows. It's well above most TV shows, but it does have some problems. The main underlying problem that I found with the TV show was it was very disjointed chronologically. And that had to do with their choice of trying to tell the stories of Yennefer, Ciri, and Geralt all at the same time. And they started at different points in the timeline with each one of these characters. And so each episode, you would see Yennefer doing something, you'd see Ciri doing something, and you'd see Geralt doing something, and you had no idea that they were all happening at different times, which made for a very, very confusing watch until you figured out this was going on. And it literally took me like 4 or 5 episodes before it finally dawned on me that this was happening. In fact, at one point I was like, hold on a second. Isn't that the same queen we saw die before? How is she alive again? I was completely lost because the TV series is it jumps all over the place chronologically. But until you finally figured out that we're watching 3 different shows here, we're watching the story of Yennefer on her timeline, we're watching the story of Ciri on her timeline, and we're watching the story of Geralt on his timeline, then it finally starts to make a little more sense. But you don't really realize that's happening until way down the road, when you finally have enough pieces of the puzzle to put it all together. And some people might say that that's a really cool concept and a really neat way to do it and blah blah blah. No, I don't appreciate it. I just wish they would have just put it all on a normal timeline and introduced the characters at the points in the timeline when they would have been relevant. It would have been a hell of a lot easier to track and follow. So that is my number one biggest gripe with the Witcher TV series, is just the disjointedness of it. But despite that fact, I still love the show. I couldn't stop watching. I had to binge watch it. I could not look away. I needed to see what happened in the next episode and the next episode and the next episode. It is that good of a show. It just hooks you, pulls you in, and doesn't let you go. The other problem was not really a problem. So one could recognize that in what we would call our entertainment industry, Hollywood, etc., that you oftentimes have to be on the lookout for identity politics being thrown into your media. And this was kind of a bizarre TV series to watch, because it looked to me like there were attempts to throw in identity politics all over the place, and in the 11th hour, somebody with common sense came along and somehow nipped it in the bud and cut it out. I don't know how else to explain it, but it's obvious that choices made that this was going to be a very identity politics rich show, but at the end of the editing or whatever, the identity politics snake didn't actually rear its ugly head. It didn't. And so you actually, when you're watching this, there are maybe one or two episodes in the middle, like around, I don't know, maybe episode 4, 5, and 6, somewhere in there. I remember there being one episode that kind of, I don't know, might have stepped across the line, and I'm pretty sure it was a Yennefer-heavy episode that maybe stepped across the identity politics line for 5-10 minutes of the episode. But for the most part, throughout the entire series, it managed to not give in to what looked like a very underhanded. It seemed like the game, or not the game, but the series really wanted to be about identity politics. But again, at the end, somebody smart came along and made it not happen. So ultimately, you can watch this series and you can really get attached to these strong female characters because they're not Mary Sue's. They're not like Rey in Rise of the Skywalker. These characters develop before your eyes. They have a story. They have reasons. They have feelings, and their feelings are something you can relate to even as a guy. You know, it's not like the I don't know. You know, they feel like Wonder Woman. They feel like Alita Battle Angel. They feel like a strong female character is meant to be, and you're not being insulted as a guy watching it. Where they could have very easily, I think, had just crossed a line that wasn't that far away. It felt like they were just barely walking the identity politics line and not crossing it during the whole show. You had so many very strong female characters, it almost felt overwhelming at times, but they weren't written in a way that detracted from men. Men seemed to complement the women. Even at one point when we were watching what could have been a very identity politics episode where Geralt was sitting in the throne room with the queen, and she's talking about having to navigate the politics of men, and she kind of shows this disdain and this disgust for the traditions of men and the tradition of surprise and all this stuff. In the end, she had to cave to the male tradition, and she had to give in to the male tradition. And so it was like, I don't know, it almost seemed like anti-feminism in a way. Almost like, here we are, this scene dominated by strong women where the men actually won out, even though the scene was set up to be won by a woman. It did a loop and caved to the male tradition. So The Witcher does a really good job of not succumbing to identity politics, even though it seems like it was completely set up to be all about identity politics. Alright, that might have been very, very long and winded, and maybe I talked too much about it, because in the end of the day, you can watch the show and not be hit over the head with the horrible identity politics that seems to haunt everything we watch these days. The Witcher is fairly free of that, and I don't know why, but I'm glad it is. I don't know. I think that us men have some guardian angel that must have came in and fixed this show at some point, because it obviously looks like it wasn't supposed to be how it is, and I'm so glad it is how it is, because it's amazing. It is really good. It's a great TV show. So if you were expecting a review that was about lighting, or if you were expecting a view that would talk about shots and this I don't know, Hollywood type TV series or movie review, I'm sorry to disappoint. That's not what I do here. I'm just an ordinary fan who watches shows, and a good show is something that makes me happy, gets me excited. I don't want to stop watching, and checks that unexplainable, that was frickin' cool box, right? And as to the why that it checked that was freaking cool box, I would suppose it's because I'm a gamer and I have so much history and love and lore for this series, even though, admittedly, I'm not as huge of a Witcher fan as many. I enjoyed the Witcher story in the video games. That was my favorite part of the Witcher video games, was the story. And I like what they've done in the TV show. In fact, it's almost like I'm getting my Telltale Witcher game that I wanted. It's even better because I don't have to waste time pressing any buttons. I'm getting a quality TV show experience, like as if you were playing a Telltale game, right? Without having to press buttons on the keyboard. I could just lay back in my chair, relax, and watch it happen. And yeah, it's awesome. I really hope that there's a second season. I can't wait to see a second season of The Witcher. And that's another reason I'm doing this video, is because if it wasn't for a couple of YouTubers that I follow, I wouldn't even know that this show exists. It almost flew past me without me even seeing it. In fact, I binge watched from the first episode to the end of the series, which who knows how long the series took, and I had no idea it existed. So the beginning series showed its first episode and its finale before it even registered on my radar. And in an age of, well, information being at your fingertips with the internet and everything, how does that happen? I mean, Netflix is not a channel. I suppose it's because I haven't been frequenting Netflix as much, but I do check it out from time to time. And how does a whole season go by that I didn't notice it on Netflix? I'm not quite sure about that or how that happened, but it did. And so if you follow me, which, there's not that many people that follow me, but if one of you 250 some subscribers, or one of you other 3 or 4,000 that watch my videos that don't bother to press the subscribe button get the information that there's a Witcher TV show and you knew nothing about it. Well, now you do, because you stumbled across my video like I stumbled across other people's videos. The videos that I stumbled across is Hollywood critics. Hollywood critics have tore this TV show apart. They've given it something like a 56 or 57% rating on Rotten Tomato. And as usual, the critics don't have a flippin' clue. The critics don't have a clue what quality television is, or quality movies for that instance. I don't understand. Evidently, it wasn't woke enough for them. I don't know why television and movies needs to be woke. I don't know when critics started to decide a movie was good because of the identity politics it throws into it. That seems to fly in the face of what critics should be scoring a good television or movie as. I mean, since when are critics so obsessed with identity politics? Well, I guess that's the world we live in these days. So the audience, I think, has given this TV series a score of something like an 88%. And I truly think it's better than 88%. I think it's at least a 93, 94%, and I honestly believe that it's the reason it's not as big as Game of Thrones or Black Sails or any of those huge premium shows before it is because, they don't have the power of an HBO on their side. And yes, Netflix is pretty big, but let's face it, the internet channels while they have grown in power, don't get me wrong, internet channels are definitely becoming more important in the current generation of things. When you have an established group such as an HBO that can promote a show like Game of Thrones, well, it's mainstream, completely mainstream. The Witcher on Netflix, I don't think is mainstream enough. I think there's just going to be a huge group of people who don't have Netflix, and they're not going to know it exists. And they really should know it exists. It's kind of like the platform is limiting the success of what this TV show could be. I definitely think it's being held back by being on Netflix. That's kind of sad for me. So if there was ever a time when I would say get Netflix for this particular show, this is the show to get Netflix for. I mean, you got to see this show. This show is really good, if not a little bit confusing with the whole jumping around chronologically stuff, but once you figure out that's happening, I mean, if you watch this review and you go in and you binge it and you know that chronologically we watch what happens with Ciri whenever she's on the screen from the beginning to the end, and chronologically whenever we see Yennefer it's from the beginning and the end, and chronologically whenever we see Geralt it's from his beginning to the end of his timeline, and then we know that they're all at different points in the timeline, then we can start to figure out, oh, that's why this is okay, But without having that information from the get-go, you get a little confused. But yeah, that's my main gripe with this show is the chronologically jumpiness of it. But other than that, I mean, phenomenal. Really, really, really phenomenal show. If you've seen it, tell me your thoughts about the show. Give me some of your ideas. If you think it walked the identity politics tightrope. Did it seem like there was somebody who came in at the last minute and wiped the identity politics out of it somehow? Like somehow somebody saved the show. Do you get the same impressions that I get watching this? I would love to hear all of that stuff in the comments. Anyway, I am James Johnson, aka Sulfurblade. This is my content. Hopefully you're enjoying it. If so, please leave a like and subscribe. And until the next time, all, peace.